Hey, girl. Down on your luck?
What the 3PL was going to have in the tissue paper, but I needed to see it and feel it. I needed my hands in it.
News is circulating that Meghan Markle is freaking out behind the doors after John Stewart cracked open her wounds in his recent segment.
I did have such a good time last week doing the program.
The segment contained such sharp and accurate comedy that even Meghan's feminist and liberal supporters started laughing.
Someone who's also acting as a founder inspired this scene from the With Love, Meghan.
It seems Meghan's bad times are continuing as the Sussex family, Netflix, and now the media are making fun of her.
I think everybody on the planet loves it right now.
So much.
John Stewart didn't stop on her, but also dragged Harry into his witty comedy, making this couple meme material on the internet.
To the first show last Monday was universally glowing.
It started like every other night. John Stewart started his The Daily Show, and the world got ready to see him roasting anyone. America's favourite comedian had a smirk on his face as he was ready to roast an unexpected celebrity on his show. Before starting the segment, he tried to give hints to his audience, but a lot of them didn't understand.
And now you've got some ideas. How about you don't kill everybody? Just do what everybody else does in that situation.
But what he did next shocked the whole world. At last, taking a defeated sigh, the comedian gave a sharp and witty comic statement about Meghan Markle. Here, we are not talking about one or two statements, but a whole segment where he roasted our so-called Her Highness and her good-for-nothing husband. Because why not? Let's earn from their downfall.
Get a podcast. That way, nobody dies. You get a podcast, nobody dies.
In a witty manner, John Stewart declared that Meghan is just like Brigitte Macron. He quipped that Meghan is basically a mini Brigitte Macron. It means she is great at slapping her man into place. The audience howled, the internet short-circuited, and Meghan's PR team probably aged 10 years in 20 seconds.
Hey, girl.
But who is Brigitte and what is this comparison about? Well, this one video will tell you everything about her. Yes, in this classic video, we can see France's First Lady smacking her husband's poor face. Brigitte Macron has long been a subject of fascination and scrutiny, not just for being married to a man 24 years her junior, but for the dynamics she seems to command in that relationship. Brigitte has long been seen as the woman behind, beside, and occasionally in front of Emmanuel Macron, strong, controlling, possibly terrifying in PTA meetings. Who do you remember here? Of course, our royal couple. This is the same situation between our royal and controversial couple, Meghan and Harry. That's because the Meghan and Harry dynamic has been following the same script, just with fewer ballots and more Spotify deals that go nowhere.
It's a standard, typical night for us.
It's a cozy night. It was what we're doing, just roasting chicken and having...
chicken.
Stewart's comparison did not randomly reach for a European figure to mock Meghan Markle. He selected Brigitte Macron deliberately, knowing that invoking her carried implications of control, dominance, and a certain kind of public-facing partnership. Meghan Markle, once a cable drama actress, now seems to run her household, her brand, and her husband's personality.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy you're here. Thank you.
Prince Harry, formerly the royal family's lovable wild card, now mostly appears in coordinated outfits, reading statements about wellness and trauma. The transformation is breathtaking. It's like watching a lion become a life coach.
But there's a lot of work to be done there, and we're just happy to be able to be a part of, well, you hope.
So, Stewart didn't invent this perception, he merely gave it a name, and that name was Brigitte Macron. At one point in time, Prince Harry was a helicopter pilot, a soldier, a cheeky royal renegade with a Guinness in one hand and a headline in the other. But now, he is a part-time podcast guest and full-time Meghan Markle support act. If there's a decision being made, rest assured Meghan's probably making it, and Harry's probably nodding enthusiastically, holding her handbag.
All of Meghan Markle's websites. So Harry definitely is utilizing the skills of his wife's, you could say, friends, to kind of continue that business venture. So everything they do is sort of...
So, did Stewart talk about Prince Harry too? Prince Harry wasn't spared in John Stewart's roast. He was mockingly dubbed an unemployed immigrant carrying his wife's handbag, a line that somehow managed to be hilarious, tragic, and eerily accurate all at once. For a man who once walked behind his mother's casket with global dignity and grew into the royal family's resident wildcard, he now looks like someone Meghan hired to manage her purse and occasionally nod on cue.
Understand that the fascination with Meghan is utterly and completely the car crash mentality.
The brilliance of Stewart's comparison lies in its precision. He didn't say Meghan was mean, he didn't say Harry was weak, he said what everyone's been awkwardly hinting at in hushed podcast segments and Twitter threads, that Meghan is running the Sussex ship and Harry is somewhere below deck folding the towels. The Duchess of Sussex says has gone from modern feminist symbol to allegedly PR micromanager, while Harry gives the vibe of someone who just figured out how podcasts work. By the way, how is Meghan controlling Harry? Well, here is a small list.
Your Royal Highness, Meghan Markle, congratulations to you both.
Thank you.
Can we start with the proposal and the actual moment of your engagement? When did it happen? How did it happen?
First, see the royal exit. Meghan reportedly wanted privacy, so the solution was a globally televised interview with Oprah and a $100 million Netflix deal. Apparently, nothing screams privacy like a 6-part documentary and a book titled Spare, which, by the way, sounds less like a memoir and more like how Meghan introduces him at parties.
It is not actually her, it's not her talents, it's not her abilities, it's not really anything like that. They just want to watch the car wreck.
Next, there's the Spotify deal. Harry mumbled a few things about mental health while Meghan auditioned for the role of most important woman in every room. Spoiler, Spotify pulled the plug. And Meghan, ever the PR maestro, simply pivoted to the next brand deal. Harry, meanwhile, was reportedly heartbroken, which is how he's looked since 2020. Their Netflix docuseries was another masterclass in narrative control of Meghan's. Long, sweeping montages of her struggle, her voiceovers, her texts to Beyoncé. This was a Netflix documentary. But what about Harry's big contribution? Well, looking increasingly like a hostage, blinking out an SOS with his eyes. That is the reason Netflix is now making its distance with this couple.
Because Netflix is starting to move towards...
Even the royal family fallout seems to follow her script. Meghan breaks the silence, Meghan makes the claims, Meghan files the lawsuits, Harry tags along holding a manila folder labelled Feelings. Once a prince with his own legacy, he's now the guy in the back of Meghan's inspirational quotes carousel on Instagram.
I remember in the car and driving up, and he said, "You know how to curtsy, right?" And I just thought it was a joke.
And let's not forget the subtle wardrobe evolution. From military regalia to beige cashmere and a 1,000-yard stare, you can practically hear the internal monologue, "Yes, dear." Public sympathy for Harry was real once. People saw him as the prince who broke the rules, the one who stood up to an ancient institution for love and mental health. But somewhere between the Oprah interview and the 17th podcast about trauma, he lost the plot, or rather handed it to Meghan to rewrite.
I would love reconciliation with my family. There's no point in continuing to fight anymore.
And here's the most brutal irony. In fleeing from royal protocol, Harry has landed squarely in another kind of palace. Here, his every move is still controlled, just now by his wife's production team. He's not a villain, he's not even a rebel anymore, he's just there, smiling politely, holding the bag.
Americans will understand this. We have medieval times, dinner and tournament. It was like that. Like, I curtsied as though I was like...
For years, Meghan walked the impossibly thin line between wronged duchess and revolutionary queen of brand management. At first, it worked. She was the anti-palace, the woman who dared to speak. But somewhere between the Oprah tell-all, the Spotify whisper pod, and the 43rd interview about how no one understands her pain, the public hit narrative fatigue. The inspirational monologue turned into background noise. What once felt like vulnerability began to feel like product placement.
We've seen a lot of Meghan's content, and it's just not that good. It's just really not, it's just average. Like, even her social media profile is awful.
On top of this, Stewart's comment broke all hell. With a single satirical swipe, Stewart cracked the polished surface. His joke wasn't just about Meghan slapping Harry into place, it was about the performance, the calculated authenticity, the relentless personal branding, the curated victimhood with premium filters. The public didn't recoil at the comparison, they exhaled. Finally, someone said it out loud.
She has done the world premiere episode of actually being on someone else's podcast. And the someone else her name is Jamie Kern Lima.
Her empowerment narrative has started to feel like a deluxe influencer kit, curated, filtered, and stamped with a trademark symbol. The problem isn't that she's self-assured, it's that every move seems less about justice and more about personal brand elevation. Somewhere along the way, Meghan stopped speaking truth to power and started selling it at $14.99 a download. Meghan's refusal to let her narrative breathe has ironically suffocated its power. Constant reinvention and self-positioning have made her less relatable and more robotic, like a TED Talk dressed in couture. On top of this, the audience's reaction to Stewart's comment is alarming.
I think everybody on the planet loves it right now.
So much.
Yes.
I must have watched it 1,000,000 times.
The roast didn't invent the backlash, but it simply cashed in on the growing disillusionment. The audience didn't flinch. They laughed because the joke wasn't just about Meghan, it was about the tired spectacle of her public persona. It was because Stewart's timings were really bad, or, I must say, perfect. At this time, Meghan's public image wasn't at its peak. It was circling the drain, humming a podcast theme song no one listened to, failed media deals, vanishing Spotify contract, and a Netflix docuseries that somehow managed to feel both overproduced and underwhelming are some of her downfalls.
It's still unclear actually about what money has come from this podcast. So originally, when she signed up with Spotify, there was money up front.
We could see how Spotify and Netflix are done with her and didn't want her to ruin their reputation or numbers, so Stewart didn't create the backlash. In fact, he simply arrived with a punchline and a mirror. But here's the brilliance. By the time Stewart made the mini Brigitte Macron joke, the public had already grown weary of the Meghan narrative industrial complex. What once felt revolutionary now reads like a recurring role on a prestige drama with no plot and too many close-ups. The empowerment monologue had become white noise, and the only people still clapping were holding PR contracts.
And they were like, well, we've got a lot of content, but honestly, again, it's super duper bad. And it just looks terrible, and I'm like...
Also, let's talk about the silence. That's the real headline. The moment Stewart delivered the jab, there wasn't an outcry, a think piece, or even a strongly worded tweet from Meghan's usual defenders. No one rushed to her rescue. In fact, there were memes all over Twitter and TikTok. Everyone was making fun of Meghan and Harry without any fear or respect. But the worst thing was, John Stewart didn't stop on Meghan's comparison with France's boss lady. In fact, he jabbed her on a sensitive part.
In the world premiere of podcast, Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, she pulled out all the stops. Here is the...
When Meghan Markle launched Confessions of a Female Founder, it was clearly meant to be her feminist TED Talk in podcast form. It should be a bold platform where she could rebrand herself as an intellectual powerhouse, spiritual guide, and CEO of all things empowering. Instead, what we got was corporate feminism in yoga pants, with all the grit and depth of a LinkedIn post captioned boss babe energy.
And again, these are 3 projects that we're all launching really at the same time. So the behind the scenes for the past year and a half have been incredibly busy and ambitious, but to see it all come to life and try to give yourself the space and the grace to make a mistake.
John Stewart didn't even need to twist the knife. He just gently pointed out the obvious. The podcast wasn't so much trailblazing as it was treadmill spinning, glossy, vague, and aggressively self-congratulatory. The show was supposed to uplift women, but mostly uplifted Meghan's personal brand, and not very high. It sounded more like a founding female than a founder, Stewart quipped, and for once, the internet didn't argue. Each episode promised vulnerability, then delivered carefully edited conversations that felt less like insight and more like scripted authenticity. Meghan wasn't so much talking with women as performing with them, every syllable focus grouped, every anecdote polished, to brand-safe perfection. At one point, critics noted the podcast sounded less like a woman discovering her voice and more like a woman reading her voice off a teleprompter. The problem wasn't just tone, it was substance, or lack thereof. Where listeners expected real discussions about the barriers women face, they got soft interviews, gentle applause, and a recurring theme of, I too am misunderstood. It was like listening to a job interview wrapped in meditation music.
Meghan Markle's podcast has ended its 8-episode run, and there are no plans to release a second season at this point.
But here is the ultimate rub. In an era where audiences crave unfiltered reality, Meghan and Harry's every move feels like it passed through a brand strategist, a crisis manager, and 3 rounds of approval. The world doesn't mind people being polished, but it matters when the Polish is mistaken for personality. Their infamous docuseries was marketed as raw insight, but played more like a wedding slideshow narrated by Oprah's interns. Their staged chicken coop interview was adorable until you realise even the chickens looked prepped for Vanity Fair. And the emotional beats, those tearful recollections and dramatic cutaways, had all the spontaneity of a skincare commercial. Stewart didn't need to expose some grand deception. He simply reminded us that for 2 people who claim to loathe the performative expectations of royal life, they've become shockingly comfortable in front of a lens. Do you agree with him? Share with me in the comments section.